Thank you very much, John. Ladies and gentlemen, just very interesting hearing these 2 points of view because both really address the whole issue of visioneering and the creation of intellectual property. And in fact, one of the key issues that the RSA looks at is how we renew the national cultural treasury. What happens about the creation of music? And I'd like to pose a couple of questions to our learned and distinguished speakers here this evening, one of which I'd like to just pose to both of you. In a YouTube environment, there's a common belief that everyone can be an artist. With the ability of anyone to pick up a camera, shoot a video, the individual achieves newfound empowerment as a bona fide creative personality or persona. How do formally trained creative professionals maximize their added value in a new order? You'd mentioned there are almost 5 million artists on MySpace. Todd, what's your view on that?
I think the most productive thing that could happen next is for what tends to happen when everybody's creating content. The danger is that, and I've seen this both from sites that I've observed and also from sites that we've constructed. When you have everybody making things and everybody commenting on each other's product, it's fun for a little while, but if you don't have people with incredible insight and incredible experience also making comments, my sense is that the general level doesn't get awful, but it kind of settles somewhere in the middle. And so in fact, the best thing, and it's exactly the kind of ecology I was talking about, I think the smartest thing would be for people who have something special to say rather than separate themselves and say, okay, we've put out our music and we want you to, we're going to make a kind of club around it and you can comment on our music and you can make your own. We're going to actually participate. We're going to comment on music as well. We're going to comment on our music and your music. And Radiohead, for instance, it's really interesting. They've done a variety of innovative things over the last couple of years. The most recent has been to, I'm sure you all know this, to put out songs of theirs online where they take all the tracks that go into the final mix of their songs, and you can buy the tracks independently on iTunes. And there's a whole environment where not only are you encouraged, but there's a whole community of people who take those tracks, make their own songs, remix things, and their competitions. And that's a really interesting model. But as far as I know, Radiohead does this, they send it out there, but they're not there every day or ever commenting on what people make and saying, that's really interesting. I mean, it's still, they're the great artists and everybody else is kind of mashing their songs up. So I think the big opportunity is to break down this, the huge separation between kind of everybody making things and then these fantastic artists off on their own. So
do you think there's still the need for a record company?
Oh, that's another question. I think. Well, no. I think for me the most important thing is that the better you are as an artist, the more you want to be in there, commenting on, having a real engagement, creative engagement with your audience on what they're making, on what they think about what you're making, and chances are, if you do that correctly, your work will get better, and the general level of everybody's work will get better, rather than everything sinking to the middle. Where record companies come in is, that's a really hard question.
That is a hard question.
No, I have an interesting.
I've become very thick-skinned over the years.
No.
Like.
No. Look, I think what you say is absolutely true. That there is nothing in the current model that reproduces. Who is it out there who helps artists develop, who gives artists resources to do the great things, and you're absolutely right. And none of the artists who we know now who are really established got there completely on their own. I mean, they may have gotten an inkling of success, but then somebody helped them. I mean, you're absolutely right. And how to sustain that industry, whatever it looks like 10 years from now, is absolutely essential.
Ralph will have seen this many times, and I can think of many examples. There are so many bands out there desperate to get a record deal that there needs to be a filtering process. It's difficult to imagine these days that for a while nobody wanted to sign U2. And somebody decided to sign U2, and then for a while they were probably disappointed with what they'd done because it wasn't going in the right direction. Then they put them with the right producer. And generally, as a public, you don't understand how when an album's delivered to a record company that the band think the big single is track 6, and actually, in fact, it was track 2, which somebody with 20 years experience realizes and is able to demonstrate. And I've seen careers launched just completely by choosing the right song as the next step in the career.
Give us an example.
You know, Simply Red, who've sold millions of records over the years. I remember when there was huge competition to sign them, and then a guy called Simon Potts, who Ralph would know, had made the record with a great producer called Stuart Levine, who had made some of the great rhythm and blues records of the years. And they had this fantastic album, but they didn't have a hit single. So what the combination of the producer and the A&R man said, you know, we're going to do Money's Too Tight to Mention. And the artist said, no, 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 it's not one of my songs. How could you ruin my art? I said, okay, we can ruin your art, or we can not ruin your art, and it can never get to anybody, or we can use this as a tool to get to a whole load of people. Money's Too Tight to Mention went out straight in the top 10, and then after that, I don't think he ever did a cover again. He was able to do that. But without that, you know, I've seen it for 30 years, without that step, he would be another artist who went back to Manchester to work in Tesco's or wherever if that magic moment doesn't happen.
Something, I just want to throw out a bit of a crazy idea.
Okay. Well, I like crazy ideas.
That's what we need.
That's what I do.
Yeah.
Well, one of the funny things at the Media Lab where I work is that you know, it's a community of very interdisciplinary people working in all kinds of areas, basically around using technology to make people's lives better. But we're also, most of our money comes from industry, so we have all kinds of different companies who come in to find new ideas and also to engage with us. And you never know where an interesting idea is going to come out. So the other day we had all of our companies in, and one of the companies was a huge bank. I won't say who it is. And they came to find me, and I was like, uh-oh, the bank's looking for me. This can't be good.
It's never a good sign.
Never a good sign. But they were looking at this, the problem of internet piracy and from the other point of view. So their big problem now, their huge fear is how people have no sense of value for credit cards. So seriously, I mean, it's an enormous societal problem. It's why one of the reasons we're in the mess we're in. And so what they're looking for, they were actually looking for a kind of set of musical games, but what they're looking for is a way to train kids to think about, to understand value. Right. To understand what it means, what things cost, and I could easily imagine, especially something, and so actually what we're talking about is, well, maybe you could do that. Maybe it's not, you know, if you make an activity that kids might use to, they'll never do it. But if you make something maybe that's kind of a family tool for looking at family finances or looking at values, you know, it can go both ways. And, you know, that could be really interesting. And it could be interesting, I was saying, well, it could be interesting if your medium is, you know, your iTunes allowance, or, you know, if you're looking. Yep. But I could imagine something where instead of, so it's definitely a punitive, I mean, there's got to be something where you say, okay, well, if there are no consequences, then people are, you know, you have to put some limits. But it would be really interesting to be proactive and say, what could we do to actually set up an environment around music that people really love, around, you know, what you can listen to, what you can't, some allowance that might, some set of games perhaps that would teach kids what, you know, where music comes from and who pays for it and what, you know, what the economics of this are, and people don't understand at all.
But you still have to have reverence for the creative process, because it's the creative process that drives the idea that led to John's example with Simply Red, to some of the things that you're finding with the new instrumentation that you're creating. And it's really how you foster that creativity such that the artists can receive compensation and be paid from all stripes.
Yeah, I think in that line, you know, personally, one of the reasons why I'm a big fan of trying to get as many people as involved as possible in making music is that, you know, if you make something yourself and you do it in the right context, you really understand the value of something that's been made really well. Yeah. You know, if you haven't touched it, if you haven't, you know, if you see a performer playing guitar fantastically well and you've never touched that guitar, you have no idea, is it easy, is it hard? You know, if you're watching a sport that you don't know, it's hard to connect because you can't feel it in your body what the limits are. But if you've grappled with it yourself, you really know. And I think that's what we've lost in our culture, and that's what we have a chance to build back in.